Hello everybody, this is a lecture of modern Indian history, and today we are going to talk about the revolt of 1857. What I am going to do in the lecture is I am going to give you a brief background of the revolt. I am going to talk about the actual events that happened in the revolt, and then we are going to talk about the consequences of the revolt. So we're going to talk about the causes, the consequences, and the entire process in between. So we're going to divide our lecture like that. And when we are going to look at the background, we need to understand that this revolt, as we call it, of 1857 was a major breakthrough in the was a major break in the sense in the history of India, or in the history of British rule in India. Why is it so? Because one major thing that it did was it made the British realize that they cannot go ahead the way they are going. It made them realize that it shook them awake that they can be certain resistance that can be put up to their rule if they do not mend their ways. So that was one of the reasons why the revolt of 1857 is supposed to be very important in the history of British rule in India. Apart from that, on more technical terms, the rule of the revolt of 1857 is important because it was after this revolt of 1857 that the actual administration of British rule in India got transferred from the English East India Company to the British Crown, because we know till now we have been talking about the British administration and the British setup and the laws and regulations that are put into place in British India, but all of that was happening under the rule of East India Company, English East India Company, and now the Indian territory would directly come under the rule of the British Crown. So that these are the two important things for which the revolt of 1857 is considered important. Now I'll briefly look at the background of the revolt and what were in the background we are going to talk about the various causes of the revolt. Because it is really important to understand why it happened and why it happened in 1857. So when we are talking about the background, we need to understand the causes, and when we are looking at the causes, we're going to look at the apparent causes and the actual causes. We're going to divide the causes into certain sections, and we're going to talk about them one by one, and we need to understand that the revolt was a result of a combination of these causes. When all of them acted together, that resulted in an outbreak, that resulted in an outburst, which is the revolt of 1857. To go by what the revolters or the mutineers of 1857 themselves said or themselves argued, we would look at the proclamation that they declared in Delhi in 1857. When they went to Delhi, they made a proclamation, and in that proclamation they outlined the reason for their revolt and the reason for that particular specific act that they were doing. And in that reason, they highlighted the religious factor. So they said that the destruction of the religion of the whole Hindustani army was aimed at by the English, by the British, and it was because of that that they are revolting, and the entire British machinery was in place to convert people to Christianity. So that was the apparent reason, that was the declared reason, the proclaimed reason of the revolt. You can also look at that reason in a way to appeal to people's sentiments, appeal to people's consciousness. So that was the appealed reason, and we cannot doubt that a major religious angle was in place when we are talking about the revolt of 1857. There were religious changes that were being brought about. There were certain changes that were being brought about in the administration and in the setup of the British army, which caused the revolt. But we need to understand that there were certain other underlying factors which we also need to look at, which we also need to understand. But first of all, we look at the religious factors. We need to know that the sepoys, who were the major mutineers, from where the mutiny started, who were the people who called out for the revolt in the first place, were actually employed from a Hindu upper class and upper caste strata, and that upper caste strata had certain caste limitations and caste regulations. So in this context, when the British started harming or started affecting their caste sentiments, that is when problems started. What happened was that till the 1820s, right, the company, East India Company, was very conscious and very respectful towards the religious sentiments and the caste sentiments of the Indian sepoys employed in the British Army. But from 1820s onwards, there were certain reforms that were being put into place, and it was as a result of these reforms that certain of these certain of these caste and religious limitations or religious considerations were being ignored. So because of the 1820s reforms, and because of the ignorance towards the caste and the religious limitations of a Hindu upper caste strata, it caused certain certain resistance from the Indian sepoys, and that resistance went on till the 1840s. That was a basic resistance, and there were certain important events in the resistance that was being put up towards the religious, towards the ignorance of religious sentiments that we're going to look at now. What we need to understand is that in 1824, that is soon after the reforms of the British Army administration, it was for the first time that we see that the sepoys were resisting. What happened in 1824 was that the 47th Regiment at Barrackpur was ordered to go to Burma, and in the process they had to cross the sea. And according to Hindu caste regulations, if a Brahmin or a Hindu upper caste crosses the sea, then his caste status is lost. So if a person is going to cross the sea and go to Barrackpur, or if a sepoy is going to cross the sea and go to not Barrackpur, Burma, then they're going to lose their caste status, and that is something that is very problematic to a Hindu upper caste section, right? So that happened in 1824. It was for the first time that a resistance was put up, and against that resistance, so people resisted, and sepoys refused to go ahead with the movement to Burma, and as a result of that, the regiment was disbanded, and the leaders who were at the forefront of resistance were hanged. So it was the first act of resistance by the sepoys, and it had started way back in 1824, and throughout the 1830s and 1840s we would see that certain resistance is being put up in favor of securing religious rights and religious right to their own religious considerations, right to their own religious customs. Was people were resisting British incursion or British army's incursion into their religious space. This was in 1824, and after 1824 we see that there was an Afghan war that was fought. It was from 1839 to 1842, and the religious sentiments of sepoys was again affected, because in a war so far away from their homeland, the sepoys were obviously not able to maintain their caste regulations, and it was because of that some of them were were removed, were not welcomed back into their families, were not welcomed back into their communities. So that was another incident where religious sentiments were hurt of the sepoys employed in the British Army. Apart from that, there were certain talks about the British government's plan of converting the entire sepoy community, or converting people to Christianity, and to make those fears worse, there were certain cantonments in which missionaries who were preaching Christianity were freely freely allowed to make their preachings, and were freely allowed to preach their freely allowed to call people to Christianity. So that was another problem. The most important and the most close to our revolt of 1857, the most important incident that happened then was the incident in January 1857. What happened in January 1857 was that there were widespread rumors that were going about a rifle in which the rifle had to be bit off to be loaded, and it was rumored that the rifle which has to be bit off was laced with pig fat and cow fat, and pig fat was is prohibited to the Muslims, and cow is considered holy by the Hindus, and it was a problem for both the communities who were a part of the British Army. And there was also a certain truth in these rumors. However, soon after the realization that this would hurt the religious sentiments, the production was stopped of those rifles, but the harm was already done. Now there were these rumors in which the people were arguing that the Britishers are consciously and deliberately trying to hurt their religion. They are trying to hurt their religious customs and religious status. So these were the religious sentiments that we could identify in the revolt of as the cause or as the background of the revolt of 1857. Apart from that, there were also major economic causes that were there as a reason for the revolt of 1857. The one thing that we need to know is that the salary of the infantry sepoy who was in infantry on foot, sepoys who were employed as infantry, their salaries were very less as compared to Savar employed in a cavalry. And out of that limited salary, he has to take care of himself, he has to take care of his uniform. So that was a major issue. But but apart from this, a very major issue was that that the sepoys who were employed in the British Army were majorly belonged, or they had their roots, they had their homes in the northern Indian landed aristocracy. And when this northern Indian landed aristocracy was hurt because of the land revenue settlement of the British, then it directly affected the sepoys who were employed in the British Army. And a major impact that happened on the sepoys was of the annexation of Awadh in 1856. What happened was, in 1856 the British annexed Awadh, and from Awadh only there were around 75,000 sepoys from the Awadh region who were employed in the Bengal infantry. So this is the major issue that was there. So after the annexation of Awadh, there were very harsh land revenue regulations which were put into place, and it was because of those harsh land revenue regulations that the Indian aristocracy and the Indian landed classes were suffering. And apart from the Indian landed classes, the Indian peasantry was also suffering. The people who were not that privileged, the people who were not landed but who were the workers on ground, were also suffering a lot. So there was a major impact of this land revenue issue on the sepoys who were employed in the British Army. What we need to remember is that every agricultural family in Awadh had a representative in the army. And it is because of that, because of the presence of the people from these landed aristocratic class in the British Army, that there were around 14,000 petitions that were filed by the sepoys against the hardships of the new land revenue settlement after the annexation of Awadh. Apart from that, we need also to remember that apart from Awadh, the other northern Indian regions and the landed classes in those regions, the talukdars and the zamindars were suffering. It is said that they lost their power and privileges, and that was a major that had a major impact that was affecting the sepoys who were employed in the army. And apart from that, apart from the aristocracy and the landed class, the artisans and the craftsmen were also suffering at the hands of the British. So an entire economic aspect, unfolds as a cause of the revolt of 1857. We need to majorly pay stress to the issue of landed classes and their, problems, and how these problems were affecting the sepoys directly, because they were the families of the sepoys, the landed classes, the landed aristocracy were families, were roots of the sepoys, and anything that happened in the northern Indian agricultural heartland affected the sepoys in the British Army directly. So this is how I'm going to sum up the causes of the revolt of 1857 for you all. Now let's go briefly through the process of the revolt, how it happened, what happened, when what happened. Then we are going to look at the failure. So what happened at in the revolt of 1857? The thing that happened was that in March before going to that, the revolt started in May. So before going to the actual events that are considered the revolt of 1857, we are going to look at certain precursors to that revolt. In March 1857, the 19th Infantry at Behrampur refused to use the cartridge that was, Enfield rifle with the cartridge that had to be bit off. Right, so that was an issue, and because of their refusal to bit the cartridge, which was considered to be laced with the pig fat and with cow fat, they were disbanded. So this was one. In April 1857, the most famous incident of Mangal Pandey shooting his sergeant major took place. So that was in April 1857. And now in May, it was on 10th May 1857 that the sepoys at Meerut, the revolt started at Meerut, and the sepoys there, they killed the European officers at hand, and they crossed Jamuna to reach Delhi. They were going to Delhi to set up a system of government, a parallel government to the British rule, and they were going to Delhi because Delhi was the seat of the last indigenous ruling dynasty, that is the Mughals. And they were going directly to the last surviving, descendant of that ruling class or of that ruling dynasty. So what happened in the morning of 11th May 1857? They entered the Delhi Red Fort and they appealed to Bahadur Shah II to join the rebellion and lead the rebellion. In this request, we can also see that there are elements of Mughal legitimacy that are being sought by the revolters. So they want British legitimacy, they want Mughal legitimacy to be with them when they are revolting, and it is through the person of Bahadur Shah Zafar that they're going to implement, or they're going to attach that Mughal legitimacy to their cause. But what happened was Bahadur Shah Zafar was taken by surprise, and he, before joining the rebels, informed the Britishers. Who did he inform? He informed the news to the Lieutenant Governor at Agra, and it was only after much persuasion by the mutineers that he agreed to become the leader and become the Shehenshah-e Hindustan, which means the ruler of the entire Hindustan. So it was a title that was given to him by the mutineers, and it was a suggestion that he is going to be the leader and the revolt is going to overtake the entire Indian subcontinent, entire Indian territory, entire Hindustan back. So this was the idea behind the thing with Bahadur Shah Zafar. The sepoys captured Delhi, the rest of Delhi that was left after they had taken Red Fort, after they had convinced Bahadur Shah Zafar, and they killed the English agent in Delhi. They killed Simon Fraser, who was the English agent at Delhi. After this, after the events at Meerut and at Delhi, the revolt spread far and wide, but it was limited to the northern Indian territories and the central Indian territories and also West India. what remained unaffected by this revolt or the revolt of 1857 were the southern territories and the Bengal and Punjab regions. They were not fully affected. They did not fully revolt. They were partially affected, but they remained mostly loyal to the British rule. And not all sepoys revolted. Obviously, only half of the sepoys were, revolting against the British. What cities were the major centers of the revolt of 1857? Obviously, Meerut, Delhi, and from there on, there was Kanpur, Lucknow, Banaras, Allahabad, Bareilly, Jagdishpur, and Jhansi. So these are the major centers, and there were various leaders of these centers that were there, and most of these leaders belonged to the aristocratic feudal class, the landed class, right? We'll go through the names of various leaders of various regions one by one. It was Nana Sahib. Nana Sahib was the adopted son of Peshwa Baji Rao II, and he was the leader at Kanpur. At Lucknow, Begum Hazrat Mahal was declared the leader. After that, at Bareilly, there was Khan Bahadur. He was a descendant of a former Rohilkhand ruler who was the leader of the rebels, of the mutineers, of the sepoys. Apart from that, in Bihar, Kuwar Singh, he was a zamindar of Jagdishpur. He was the leader. And at Jhansi, the famous Rani Lakshmi Bai took the leadership. Her territory was taken over by the Britishers under the doctrine of lapse. We have already read about that. And after that, soon after these leaders emerged, and soon after Delhi was captured by the revolters, by the sepoys in 1857, they sent out letters. The revolters, they sent out letters to the people, to the rulers of nearby regions to join them and to support their cause. And at Delhi, they set up they set up an administrative system in which there were 10 members. It was a parallel government kind of a thing that was set up at Delhi. There were 10 members. 6 were from the army and 4 were from the civilian department. So there were there was this administrative setup that was put into place in Delhi soon after its taking over by the sepoys. And obviously we know Bahadur Shah Zafar was declared their leader overall. He was the leader of the overall movement. Now, after having established the causes of the revolt of 1857 and the actual events that went into the revolt of 1857, we need to look at the consequences and the reasons for its failure, because we know that it was a failed attempt at reclaiming for India its past glory and reclaiming for India its indigenous rule. So it was a failed attempt. And what were the reasons for that failure? The revolters kept a pace for a year, but after a year, one by one they fell, the leaders fell, and the revolt was suppressed, one step at a time by the British. The main reasons for their failure and for this, for the failure of their struggle was that the rebels or the mutineers or the sepoys or the people fighting for, the indigenous rule in India, their main reason was, we can identify, certain reasons for that failure, and the main reason was obviously the lack of coordination and the lack of leadership. So, there was no coordination, there was hardly any, organized political opinion or political vision that these revolters, these mutineers had. Also, they did not have a source or supply of arms and ammunition, and they had no system of communication and command, and it was because of this lack of communication that there was lack of coordination, and because of this lack of coordination, certain things fell out of place. What happened was, and also another main reason was the lack of backing of the entire country. We know that the revolt was limited to certain regions, and there were obviously certain regions which remained loyal, certain sepoys which remained loyal to the British, and a larger picture of this can be understood from looking at the recapture of Delhi by the British. And when that was done, when the recapture of Delhi was done by the British, there were 1700 British who were fighting on the British side, and apart from that there were 3200 Indians who were fighting on the British side. And it was because of this lack of unity, lack of backup for the sepoys and their cause, that the revolt of 1857 failed majorly. There was obviously no political opinion, and some of the leaders of the revolt were unsure about the revolt in the beginning, and they at times coordinated with the British, and they made their own deals with the British. We'll look at what happened, how did the revolt waned away. We know on September 20th, 1857, Delhi fell to the British, and it was the first loss to the revolters or the rebels. And after this, the 82-year-old Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was considered the emperor of Hindustan, he took refuge in Humayun's tomb, and he eventually made a deal with the British for his own life while sacrificing the lives of his son. But he was exiled. He was exiled to Burma. He was deported to Burma, and this loss of Delhi, which was their center of the rebels, was a major blow to their organization. Apart from Delhi, it was Rani Lakshmi Bai who died fighting the British on 17 June 1858. Nana Sahib, he refused to surrender, and he escaped to Nepal in 1859. Kunwar Singh, died in 1858. It was in May 1858. And Tantia Tope, who was the right hand of Nana Sahib, he carried on guerrilla warfare with the British, but he was also, given away. He was also, a zamindar gave him away, and he also died in April 1859. So we see that these people, very you can say brave people, fighting battles, but there was no organization on any front which could have eased, or which could have better organized the rebellion, or which could have made the rebellion more effective than it was. So there were different centers where battles were being fought, but there was no organization, there was no unity. So we'll look. This is how we're going to understand the revolt of 1857. We just need to look at the major consequences in the administrative aspect of the Indian territory that was done. But before going to that, we need to understand at how we are going to look at this revolt. Should this revolt be looked at as a mere military rebellion, or should it be looked at as a the first war of independence, or the first struggle for independence? There are scholars who have argued on both the sides. There are people who say that this was the first struggle for Indian independence by the Indians, but there are others who argue that it was merely a military rebellion. It was an instantaneous revolt which was not politically motivated. There are obviously arguments on both the sides, but a more plausible view to go by would be that there were certain elements of patriotism in the rebellion of 1857, but the larger nationalistic zeal and national struggle that was about to be seen in India, the national vision against a foreign rule, was not yet developed in 1857, and there was still attempt or a desire to go back to pre-British days, to go back to the time when there were indigenous rulers ruling in their smaller territories with a larger Mughal loosely controlled legitimate rule. And this was something that was largely aimed by the mutineers, and the larger nationalistic spirit was not there, and obviously the entire Indian territory and all the people from southern regions, from territories of Bengal and Punjab were not there, and it was it was because of the absence of a unified Indian nature of the revolt that it cannot be called the first national struggle, but still there were elements of patriotism, there were elements of hatred towards foreign rule, there were elements of claiming back for indigenous rulers the right to rule India. So this would be a more plausible view to go by. Now, what were the consequences on the administrative front? We'll just look at it in a very brief manner. It was on 2nd August 1858 that the British Parliament passed an act for the better government of India, which declared Queen Victoria as the sovereign of British India. So now the sovereignty of British India is directly under the British Crown, under Queen Victoria. And the act also declared the Secretary of State for India to be a member of the cabinet. So the Secretary of State for India was now to be a member of the British cabinet. The act was put into action or came into effect on November 1st, and it was then on that day that the Queen of England, Queen Victoria, declared a proclamation in which she promised religious toleration and proposed to govern Indians according to their established customs. So this was this proclamation of Queen Victoria can be seen as a brief overview of the guiding principles of British policy in India from 1858 onwards. What happened is a different story, but we need to understand that 1857 was a major shock to the Britishers. It was after 1857 that they started pursuing the knowledge about the Indian subjects, and they started studying the books and traditions and historical customs of Indians. 1857 was played a major role in that development of that consciousness in the British mind. So this is more or less what we need to know about the revolt of 1857. Thank you.